Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Professor Jennifer Hill and I run Divide and Conquer Math, which is a YouTube channel and website dedicated to helping you learn math on your terms. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about how to study. So studying sometimes feels like a black box for some students, and I worry that some students think, it's either you have it or you don't. You either understand it or you don't. And the reality is that when it comes to tests, that's not really how things work. Students who do really well on tests, it's not like there's some Albert Einstein where, they're just naturally smart. So the thing about doing well in an exam is that it really comes down to certain habits. So in this video, I just want to break down a couple of things that I don't think work or kind of work against you, and then what I noticed does work. So let's start by talking about the things I've noticed just don't seem to work or don't seem to be as good for students. So the first one has to do with time. So you want to be very open about how much time you're going to spend on an exam. A lot of times I will hear students who will not do well on an exam, and I'll ask them what they did, and they will tell me things like, oh, I spent, an hour studying or 2 hours studying. And that's great to set aside a block of time. But the thing about preparing for an exam is that it's not like there's some magic number and then you're gonna do well on it. It takes as long as it takes to understand the material for an exam. So be open to the idea that you might have to spend more time than you thought you would to do well in an exam. Don't beat yourself up if suddenly you're spending way more time than you used to. So that was tip number one. So now let's talk about tip number two. You want to be very active in your approach for studying. A very common thing that I hear from students who don't do as well on exams as they would like is they tell me, well, I looked at my notes the night before, or I looked at my homework, or I watched a bunch of videos. So those are not bad things to do, but those are not enough for an exam. So think about what an exam actually is. It is an active activity, right, that you have to show what you know. And so if you just read or watch videos or look at stuff, that's not what you're going to be doing on the exam. On the exam, you're going to be doing things. And so if you want to study for the exam, you also need to be doing things. And so that is probably the most important thing, is for you to practice for an exam and spend as much time being active in it as you can. So now let's talk about what I've noticed does work and the true work that goes into preparing for an exam. Students who tend to do the best on exams practice a lot. And so really the thing that you have to do is identify where you can find a bunch of practice problems with solutions and do as many of them as you can until you are at a certain level of consistency. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get practice problems. You can use your book if you have a book for class. Usually if you have an online homework system, there's almost always ways to get extra practice problems. You can ask your professor or your teacher how to find those extra problems if you're not sure. And if you don't have either one of those resources and you're just looking for extra practice problems, you can even go to a website like openstacks.com. Those are like free math textbooks that usually have lots of problems in them with solutions. Or you can use my videos. So I've actually been creating a series called Study with a Math Professor, where I've created just entire free sets of problems with worked out solutions, and the videos include the worked out solutions. So there's a lot of options for how you find those practice problems. So after you find these problems, what should you do with them? Which ones should you study? Well, I like to use a little rule that I call the 3-5-3 rule. So what that means is for every single lesson that's going to be on your exam, what I recommend that you do is you go through 3 basic problems, 5 medium difficulty problems, and then at least 3 difficult problems. Although if you really want to study very hard, maybe consider doing 5 difficult problems. The reason I suggest this is, one, just to kind of help get you started and get you going in the right direction. And I think you can learn a lot from what you do and don't understand by using this principle. So if you try 3 basic problems and you just knock them out of the park, that's great, you got the basics. But you want to make sure that you really understand the material deeply. So then you want to go through, 5 average difficulty problems, which are usually found around like the center of the section. And then look for 3 to 5 of the hardest problems that you can find in that section. Now, if you get a problem wrong, that's where you really want to hold yourself accountable. If you work through the basic problems and you get one wrong, you want to set a little rule for yourself of how many more you're going to try until you move on. So don't let yourself move from the basic problems until you are sure that you've mastered the basics. Don't let yourself move on from the average difficulty problems until you really feel like you've mastered them. And when you check your answers, also take time to figure out why you made a mistake if you got it wrong. This is another very important thing about studying. If you are prone to making little addition errors or subtraction errors or minus sign errors, that is not the type of mistake that you want to make in an exam, because that can very easily be the difference between a B and a C. It happens all the time on exams, students who know what they're doing, but they make these kind of little errors over and over. So if you notice that you are making those errors while you're studying, force yourself to practice more until you hit that level of consistency and you catch yourself making those errors. On the other hand, maybe you look at the answer and you realize you just didn't know how to do the problem at all. Well, if that happens, then you want to make sure that you spend some time kind of getting some extra help, however you might need that. That could be reading over your notes, watching YouTube videos. It could also be asking your professor or a friend or a tutor for help. So if you realize that you really don't understand it, don't just move on. Force yourself to go back and really learn things. And you'll see on my channel, I have lots of resources. If you ever realize that you forgot something, I have lots of resources to help you out. So that's really the idea, the 3-5-3 rule to get you started. And once you kind of nail that problem set, then you move on to the next lesson. And so you just keep applying this to each set of topics or lessons that are going to be on your exam. So before I go, I want to make a shameless self-promotion for my Study with a Math Professor series. You can find this on my channel, or you can search for Study with a Math Professor Divide and Conquer on YouTube, or you can go to my website. Lots of ways that you can find it. And so the way that my problem sets are broken down, I've got one that's just basic, I've got one that's just average difficulty, I've got another problem set that will just be difficult, and then I usually have a final problem set of all levels of difficulty. And otherwise, guys, that covers everything that I have to tell you for this video. I'm wondering what you think, or if you have other tips that you want to share. So please feel free to leave me a comment below. And if you have suggestions of other things I can do for my channel, I'm always listening to you guys. I'm trying to make a super positive, helpful math community here on YouTube and in the internet. So anytime you guys give me feedback, it really helps me. Okay guys, so I will see you next time. Ciao, ciao.